Hello, this is Peter Davison, and you're listening to Discussing Who.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Discussing Who. I am Kyle Jones, and breaking news, there is not going to be a review of anything tonight. We're going to be talking about the future, and when we're recording this, we're going to be talking about this upcoming weekend. And the best way to talk about this upcoming weekend is to say, welcome back, Alan Siler from WHOLANTA. Alan, how are you?
Absolutely wonderful. So glad to be here. Thanks for asking me.
Well, I think I can say for all three of us, we're glad that you are here. But before I introduce who are the rest of the three of us, let me just say there have been very few points in the last 2 to 3 months where I felt like a real excitement about something. I did feel a big excitement about something whenever I saw the post that there was going to be a WHOLANTA 2020. So let's just begin off the start and saying thank you. This is exciting.
Oh, I'm so glad you feel that way. It's going to be interesting. It's not something we've ever done before. So it's an experiment and we'll see how it goes. But hoping it's going to be great. Cool.
Well, speaking of experiments, because every time we get on a recording, I'm sure these two gentlemen having to deal with me feel like they're in an experiment gone wrong. And that first one, of course, is Clarence Brown. Clarence, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. I, for one, am happy you found your recorder.
Oh, dear. Considering last week I didn't have my recorder, I have my recorder.
Well, Clarence is in on it, too.
Yeah, I might as well enjoy it.
Yeah. So, you can't beat him, right?
See, be careful, my friend, what you ask for, because that might keep me in this voice and make me say, Mr. Lee Shackleford, how are you?
No, very well, thank you. Yes.
Oh, dear. Do you have a recorder, too?
No, I don't. I was just thinking that if you're going to keep brushing up your Patrick Troughton, I need to work on my Fraser Hines. But Fraser Hines doing Jamie.
No. Jamie, Zoe.
He didn't really talk like that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anything interesting going on for all three of you? I know what Alan has going on probably. But
he's got something going on.
He's got something going on. But anything interesting in the worlds of Clarence and Lee?
Yeah. I got a Relativity coming out tomorrow. That's kind of exciting.
Yes. What? And I do believe if I were psychic, I might say Stephanie Lindsay.
Correct. Lovely interview with lovely Stephanie Lindsay, who listeners know as Martha Schumacher, like Fraser Hines. She doesn't really talk like that in real life. Yeah. So get to know the real Stephanie. So that's coming out as we record this tomorrow. We're in such a weird time bubble here, aren't we? I mean, I wish that we could be, encouraging everybody to get on board with WHOLANTA, but by the time they hear this, it will be but a happy memory.
Well, because of the wibbly-wobbly timey-wiminess of my scheduling, because we recorded in advance, I'm going to fast-track this one and put it out either hopefully tomorrow morning or tomorrow evening. So this will actually go out before WHOLANTA. It will go out tomorrow. And
take a day off from work.
Hey, I just won't sleep. I'll troll away. I'm that excited about WHOLANTA. Seriously, I'm going to go out and edit out what episode numbers that we said were coming next so that we can slot this before it happens.
Nobody's going to hold us to that because this is, I feel like this kind of came out of nowhere, but.
It kind of did, actually.
Well, yeah, because I remember you taking a poll and saying, who would be interested if I tried to do this?
Yeah.
You must have gotten buried in an avalanche, I think.
A little bit, yeah. It's funny because it's been kind of percolating in the back of my mind for a couple of months. And, it was just, I don't know, spur of the moment. I just thought, you know what? Let's do it. So I put that out just to see what response it would get. And it got a pretty good response.
Yeah.
So there you go. The origin story.
My wife is working on a psychology symposium they're going to do this summer, and they've one of the things that they've run into is the sort of a technological limitation that if they have more than 500 people coming, they'll have to change the way it's being presented. I'm not sure what platform this is they're talking about. And so I got the impression you've run smack into that.
Well, no, not really, because it wasn't ever my plan to do it strictly through Zoom. What we're doing is we're going to be conducting all the guest interviews on Zoom. So it'll only be, 4 people at the most at one time. And then the Zoom call will be broadcast live on Facebook. So the audience will be watching it on Facebook and can interact with us there. They can actually, we're going to take questions in advance, but you can always ask a question at the time in the chat on the sidebar of the Facebook Live. So there will be some interactivity going on.
Fantastic. Wow. Because we just watched Remembrance of the Daleks, and now we're all jumping up and down to hang out with Sophie Aldred. So. Oh
yeah. We've got one of the panels that we're doing is the music of Doctor Who.
Yes.
And I've got Dominic Glenn.
Yeah.
And as of just a little while ago, a little late this afternoon, Mark Ayers also. Which I'm very excited about. And since you bring up Remembrance, sadly, we weren't able to get Kev McCullough to join them because he lives in New Zealand, and it would be like 3 in the morning or something when they would be doing it. So
he said no.
Yeah, well, sleep is an important thing.
Yes, it is.
So we have Dominic and Mark, which I'm very excited about.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's terrific.
So what was it like, from the reception of reaching out to people? Because beforehand, you were reaching out to people to actually physically come and spend X number of days in Atlanta, Georgia. Mm-hmm. What was it like reaching out to people for this different type of medium that's totally different from, what you've done in the past?
Well, the benefit is that at least they don't have to fight airport traffic and worry about flight delays and all that kind of stuff. As long as they can make it into whatever room their computer is in, and flip on, the Zoom connection, then, it's easy peasy. And it was funny because when I first did that little test announcement to see what kind of response we'd get, a few of the people that have ended up as guests on the Saturday contacted me and said, "Hey, this is really exciting. If you need anything, let me know." Dominic Glenn was one of them.
That's terrific.
Yeah. John Davey, who is one of the creature performers in the new series. He started in 2006 and all the way up to the most recent season. He's played tons of aliens and monsters and stuff and some background human characters. I got to know him from last year's WHOLANTA, and we're still buddies, and he contacted immediately and he was like, "Yeah, sure. Let me know what I can do." So it was kind of exciting because I didn't really, some of the guests lined themselves up, which was quite nice.
Yes.
Was being able to ask that question, I just want to know, was that spurred by some particular thing? Of course, we're all work from home, a lot of video conferencing going on with your job or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I have seen a lot of different, intellectual properties, like former actors popping up to do different things online, different events, because of the current situation we're in. So is that something that kind of prompted you to say, let me float this out there?
Kinda. It was, yeah. But really the impetus behind this was, last year was supposed to be the final WHOLANTA, right?
Right.
At least for a little while. It was either going to be ending last year or we were going to take a little break from it and restart it at another point. So we weren't planning on having one this year at all. And even if we had planned on one, it would have had to been canceled. So we wouldn't have ended up having it at all. So the funny thing is that being in a, quarantine lockdown where everything is basically being conducted online right now gave us the opportunity to do another WHOLANTA. And I'll tell you that the thing that really kind of wouldn't let, leave my head is that I really did need a break from WHOLANTA. It's a huge undertaking and it's a lot of work And so we were like, okay, we're all in agreement. We're going to, it's going to be the last one. And I have had a very hard time letting it go. So it was more like my own personal desperation of wanting to do WHOLANTA again. And the Zoom atmosphere of the quarantine providing a method for it actually to happen. So it was my own desperation. That's all.
But it has been fascinating. I'm thinking about other shows, like podcasts that I listen to, and because everybody's at home all of a sudden, sometimes these kind of I don't want to say B-level shows, but shows where they would have interesting guests, but not celebrities. Suddenly, they'll be able to get celebrity guests because all they have to do is call them on the phone.
The thing that the thing that I've found most interesting about this whole situation is the number of musicians, like big rock stars, who have started doing like a weekly thing from their home studio. Yeah. Paul Stanley from Kiss has been doing a thing where once every week he comes in and he will take one of his songs, Kiss song or solo song or whatever, and we'll break it down, tell you the history of it, how he came up with it, he'll play it. Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day has done a series once a week. He does a cover of a different song live from his studio. Wow. So that's been the thing. The Indigo Girls did a concert from their living room.
Get out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where they're, part of it is playing their old songs, and part of it was previewing new songs from their album that's coming out next month. So it's been exciting. So I'm like, you know what? I don't want WHOLANTA to be left out of all this.
Right. Well, so is that how suddenly we have Colin Baker now when we didn't before?
When I did the first guest announcements, there was 4 people. Sophie, and I emailed her, and she was at our convention in 2011, I think it was. And we've just, we remained friends over the years, and I've seen her when I go to Gallifrey 1 and things like that. Yeah. And drop her a line once in a while. So, I just said, look, here's the thing we're doing. I want to, if you would like to, I'd love to have you on. We'll spend the majority of the time talking about your new novel and the season 26 box set, the Blu-ray box set that just came out. So we'll be talking about new, relevant stuff. Would you be interested? And she was like, of course, sign me up for, whatever time she asked for. And, so it was that easy. And then Colin, I emailed and didn't hear back from him right away. It was maybe a week or so later when he responded and said, well, yes, since it's you asking and since you have done my laundry in the past, of course I will.
Now, there's a story there.
There is a story. I'm one of the few people in the world who has done a load of a doctor's
laundry.
delicate things. Yeah.
but did you look him in the eye and say, I'd be honored as he strode off with the basket?
And the thing was, he was doing like 3 or 4 conventions in a row, and Dragon Con was the second or third one. So he had been, kind of stuck in America for, this long stretch of, weekend events. And I was like, I'd be happy to, help you out with the laundry. No problem. Because who gets to say that?
Exactly.
That they've done the doctor's laundry.
But you know what? I think, listening to it from not your perspective, but from the other side, I think it says something about WHOLANTA in general, that you have these people who are connected to Doctor Who, but who have also been to your shows before and are so willing to either reach out before you do and offer, hey, I'm interested. Just let me know what I can do. That says something positive about the experience that you've created and helped to create.
Very true. Yeah.
I will say that it's been, we did it for 15 years total. And, when you work with celebrities and you meet these people for the first time, you have no idea what to expect. And some people can surprise you. Some people may not come across the way that you think they will. The beauty of this is that 15 years of working with Doctor Who people, every single person has been amazing. Like, they are just wonderful people. like to a person, they're all great. And so, I've had if somebody had told me 30 whatever years ago when I first started watching Doctor Who that I would, take Colin Baker to dinner and I'd be friends with Sophie Aldred and all this nonsense,
Yeah.
no one would ever have believed. And so it's, a shock to me that I actually am in that position. But yeah, they're all great, great, great people and I love them all.
I now have a fantasy of traveling back to you when you were a young person and say, one day you'll be doing Colin Baker's laundry. And you're saying, no, what has become of me that I have fallen to this?
It's
cool.
Colin came to WHOLANTA the first time in 2013. We had him. He was the first doctor we ever had. And it was, we went big because we wanted to do something for the 50th anniversary. And so I was up on stage, about to do his Q&A and he was running a couple of minutes late. And somebody in the audience said, so, you're about to interview your favorite doctor. Are you nervous? And I said, I have known for 25 years what I would ask Colin Baker if I had the opportunity to. So no, I'm not.
I have been practicing for this.
Exactly.
One of the things that always lives in my mind when he and Nicola Bryant were at WHOLANTA, when was that?
2017.
2017.
Oh, okay, wow. The three of us were there, kind of all sitting side by side and kind of drinking it all in. And somehow the question of whether or not the show was too scary for children came up. And Colin, who I know has had this conversation, on and off for 30 years, he said children should be frightened regularly.
Yeah.
And I was very interested in that conversation. And I came home and repeated that to my family. And my stepdaughter said, I don't know who that guy is, but I don't like him. And I thought, boy, I didn't present that right because and it did. It led to an interesting conversation because I feel sure that what he meant was not that you should scare your kids for no reason.
Exactly.
But that what he's saying is that television fantasy is a way of practicing what real life is going to be like. And shows like Doctor Who, you can be scared in a moment and then you see that it's going to be okay. Part of what that does is it helps you to be brave in real life. That's my own thinking, but I think there's some science behind that too. And I'm pretty sure that's what he meant.
Oh, I'm pretty sure. Yes. He is certainly not the kind of guy who would want you to terrorize your children.
No. He has three daughters, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think they live in terror of him, despite what you see in the five-ish doctors.
Right. Right.
They're not afraid of him. They're just exasperated. But anyway, so sweet.
One of my favorite Colin Baker stories from WHOLANTA was that second time that he came. We have a David Bowie tribute band here in Atlanta, and Mr. Baker is quite a Bowie aficionado. So, I had them playing, and part of the reason that I booked him for the convention was because I knew that Colin Baker loved Bowie. And of course I do too. So, these guys came in and they did a show and I told Colin about it and he's like, oh yeah, I'll stop by for a few minutes. He sat for over an hour and watched almost their entire show. He loved them. So that's one of my favorite things. It's just something you don't expect, a doctor to just sit late night at your convention and just watch a band play for an hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he was so excited about it.
High praise indeed.
Yes.
So the three of us have often had a conversation about what communities evolve around different franchises, whether it's comic books, whether it's Star Trek, whether it's Doctor Who. Specifically on Doctor Who, what do you find unique about the fandom, this community of people that you didn't want to give up and you saw in this last year that you were kind of fiending for WHOLANTA again? What is it that's unique about the Doctor Who community?
That's a very good question. I would say that, and I think this is true about every fandom, but I think that maybe Doctor Who has a little bit of an edge over other things in that it's a show that can do anything and go anywhere, and the limits of imagination are completely wide open. It can be it can be a futuristic space station one week. It can be set in the Wild West the next week. Star Trek does that too with holodecks, but not on a regular basis. Doctor Who can be anything it wants to be every week. And I think that what that does with the fandom is that it brings very creative, very insightful, very proactive fans. And these are people that, it's not just cosplayers. The cosplay community for Doctor Who is unbelievable. But it's creatives in all facets that are drawn to the show. And I think it's because the imagination of the show is so unlimited that it gives people who are creative and who are imaginative themselves a real outlet for everything that they would ever want to do.
Cool. Good answer.
Wow. Yeah.
Thanks. That was off the cuff.
I was going to say, if you were making that up as you go, that was pretty good.
Thank you.
Well, it leads me to ask sort of the ancillary question to that because you're one of the people who I think has probably thought about this the most. But the three of us have been charged to write a chapter for a book about why the Doctor, the character, matters.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been polling people about that, so I would give a Purdy to know what your answer to that is. Why do we care? Especially in our beloved franchise where the central character keeps changing.
Mm-hmm. I think the change is part of it. I think that the not being defined by who you currently are or who you have been is a powerful message. There's another off the cuff one for you.
Yeah. But again, pretty profound. Yeah. You're cooking tonight, Alan.
Well, you got me on a good night. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
The meds are working. Kidding. But yeah, I think, why the Doctor? I think that, I think also he or she is, for the most part, a pacifist, for the most part, an intellectual. I think that seeing a hero who attempts to avoid violence and attempts to always attack a problem from an intellectual standpoint and to outthink an opponent is also a powerful message. I think it gives an alternative to, and I'm not dogging Star Trek because I'm a huge Trekkie, but it gives an alternative to, firing phasers on something. And I think it goes back to, this is jumping way back to 1970 in the Silurians. The end of the story, the Doctor is adamant that, do not send people down into those caves. We're going to negotiate with the Silurians. We're going to find a peaceful solution. Don't take rash actions. And the Brigadier's like, okay, sure. Yeah. See you later, Doctor. And as soon as the Doctor's out of the room, he orders a missile strike.
Yep.
And the Doctor's reaction to that action is so profound. And I think that sums up who the Doctor is in regards to the world in which we live.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's a moment that I always think of as this is what this show is about.
Yeah.
You can't believe that the Brigadier has done what he's just done. We like this guy.
Yeah.
But he thinks he's right.
Mm-hmm.
He thinks he's doing the right thing.
Yeah.
But the Doctor basically has to say, okay, we're done. You and I are done.
But see, that's good storytelling. When
really
you've got
is.
two people on the opposite sides of a problem, both who think they're right and both who take actions based on what they think is the right thing to do, not for themselves, but for the world at large.
Yeah.
And they're completely opposing. It comes back to the Christmas Invasion, where, what's her name?
Harriet Jones, Prime Minister. Harriet Jones?
Right.
Yeah.
When Harriet Jones takes
Alan
that
Siler is
action-
the only person in the universe who doesn't know who she is.
That was good.
No. So, sadly, she's one of my favorite new series characters. Anyway,
Absolutely, yeah. But Harriet anyway. Yeah.
but she takes that action against the Sycorax,
Mm-hmm.
and she is sure that she's right. And the thing that I loved about that was that they came back to that moment a couple of seasons later in the end of season 4, and she comes back and she says, and I've thought about that for the last 3 years, and I still would take the same action that I took. And it was not what the doctor would have wanted her to do, but she acted from her own, perspective and held true to her beliefs. And, she has a point. The doctor is not always around.
That's right.
So,
you can't argue with that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a total aside.
No, it's all related to the same point, I think, but it's a great answer. But it's, I guess what we're getting at is, why would anybody go to the effort as a volunteer, for God's sake, to put together an event like WHOLANTA online? You must be nuts, or it's really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it is really important.
Or you're nuts.
Well, there is that too.
But can they or should they be mutually exclusive? I admit I'm nuts.
God, I hope not.
Yeah. You hope I'm not nuts, or you hope that they're not mutually exclusive?
I hope they're not exclusive.
Okay.
So you can be desperate.
Okay, thank you. So I would be totally nuts if I ended this call without asking this question, because I'm dying to know, even though I've seen some of your reactions on Facebook. But since people who are listening can't see reactions on Facebook, I want to ask this question. General summary view, Alan Siler, what was your thoughts on Series 12?
That is a big question.
How much time you got?
Yeah, exactly. In general, I enjoyed it. There were some, like any season, there are some high points and some low points. For the most part, though, I really enjoyed it. The first episode was so good. I thought it was just one of the best new series openers ever. The second episode was, a little bit of a letdown, but Doctor Who has sort of a history of part twos, not really living up to the part one. And this one was at least close. So I thought it was a terrific way to start. I thought the Frankenstein episode was superb. That is one of the most original and scariest things that the show has ever done with a Cyberman. I thought that was just terrific. The whole extra doctor played by Joe Martin was an unexpected twist. The timeless child thing was, certainly divisive amongst the fandom. I don't really have a problem with it, because there's been so many hints at that being the case, going all the way back to, as everyone says, Brain of Morbius. But then there were also hints in Remembrance of the Daleks, and this was something that was explored in the novels back in the 90s. So it's not a new idea. It's been around for a long time, and I'm interested to see where they go with it. So yeah, overall, I thought it was enjoyable.
It's funny hearing you say that, because I'm sitting here thinking, in the last when we watched it, especially when we got to the Timeless Children and the week after, I think Clarence and Lee both had to talk me off the ledge, because I was about ready to jump off the proverbial Doctor Who ledge. Yeah. But in the last, what would you guys say? In the last 4 or 5 weeks, we've gone and spent a lot of time in Classic Who reviewing classic episodes. And I keep finding myself saying, maybe Chibnall had a point here. Maybe Chibnall was right here,
Yeah. Yeah. And the interesting thing is that there's always been points in the series history where the current showrunner does something that changes everything. The War Games was one. There was a 6-part story and a 4-part story that were going to end the season, and they both sort of like petered out, and they had to write a 10-part thing to fill the end of the season. And they just started writing, and to, stretch it out, they introduced the Time Lords, brought the Doctor back to his home planet, put him on trial. It was a way of, stretching the story out a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And that changed everything. You get to, in Tom Baker, you get to the Deadly Assassin, where it all of a sudden layers all this Time Lord history into one 4-part story. And all of a sudden you have a definition of how many times the Doctor can regenerate. You have the structure of the Time Lord government, basically, hints about how the society is, like sort of a class structure. You have all this stuff that's just thrown into this one story. And, every showrunner has something that they add to. And I don't think that this is any more drastic than some of the other things that we've had in the past. It's just that those things do come from the past and they don't seem drastic now.
Well said.
Thank you.
So, Cal, if I may, I have a question about the fandom, and it's more so centered around how the fandom can steer the direction of the show. So I'm going to give you a few examples right here. The outcry with Sonic the Hedgehog's design, they redid him for the movie. The recent Strange New Worlds being greenlit because fans petitioned for it and they really wanted it. They greenlit it. And also the Justice League remake or the Zack Snyder cut that they're doing that's coming out in a few years. So do you think there has been a situation in Doctor Who where the fandom has steered the show in a different direction? Or if it hasn't happened, do you think it will happen?
I don't know. That's a very, very interesting question. I think there's a possibility that Series 12 sort of was geared that direction because of that. I don't know for sure, and I certainly have no evidence to back that up, but, you know, it's such a drastic change from Series 11. And I'm sure that Series 11, you know, was intended to be the clean slate that any fan, any new viewer can jump on and watch. And there were no returning villains. There were no returning monsters. There was nothing that made you have to know any of the show's history to watch it. And then all of a sudden in Series 12, it's like a dump truck comes and unloads this massive amount of continuity and, you know, returning characters. And it's just to the point where it was almost overwhelming. You know, you get to like the another really good one was the Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, where you got all this extra stuff like a Silurian gun, you know, is just thrown in for no reason. And it's just like every opportunity to make a point to the show's past, whereas Series 11 completely ignored the show's past. And so it does seem like it's a drastic change. Now, I'm sure that some of that was planned, but it just seems like such an overload.
Yeah.
You know, that it's just drastic in the way that it was done to me. But, you know, it was still a good season. I still enjoyed it.
Right on.
Cool.
But that's a possible way that the fandom, the reaction, you know, affected the show.
And I agree. That was a very good question, by the way. So I want to ask a question before we wrap up about something that you had been working on kind of, I think, as a side project, but I think in the last year you've put a lot more energy, full force into it, and that is Cosmic Press. So you want to tell everybody what that is and how they could find out more about what that is?
Absolutely. And I appreciate you asking. It's a publishing company that I founded. I had been actually, you know, I've written a few books, a few Doctor Who books, Doctor Who's Greatest Hits and Children of Time, the Companions of Doctor Who, and then one about Capaldi's second season, Series 9. And I'd done those under the banner of Cosmic Press. And I kind of got to a point where I wanted to expand what I was doing. So I, you know, officially formed the business, you know, filed all the paperwork and everything. And have been kind of working on doing things with that for the past, you know, getting groundwork laid for the past year. The way it stands right now is that I've got the main title, the main name, and then 2 imprints. Cosmic Press in the main will be doing novels, some nonfiction books, mostly teen and adult. So I've also got Cosmic Classics, which is going to be doing reprints of classic editions, and Cosmic Kids, which is going to be obviously a kids line. So I have, I've got, War of the Worlds has come out, and then a new edition of The Time Machine. And I try to do something different with each one of those. So The Time Machine has got a new introduction. It's got the short story that preceded the novel, and then an essay by a professor of science fiction that sort of ties the two together, how the one evolved into the other. And then War of the Worlds, I have exactly. And it's interesting because there's a you know, ever so slight Doctor Who tie in there too. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
And then Time Machine, I've got 2 of his other short stories that are set on or involve Mars, and then the novel, and it's got when you put them together, there's kind of a cool little narrative thread with the way the Martians observe us from afar, and then are essentially spying on us directly in the second story, and then invade us in the third story.
Yeah.
It's really kind of a cool flow.
Through the crystal egg, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, which is a really fascinating story.
Can't stump me on H.G. Wells, man. I know my
H.G.
I can
see that.
No, I am strangely obsessed with War of the Worlds, and I have many, many different editions. And I've always wondered why there wasn't an omnibus edition that had things like Crystal Egg and War of the Worlds between 2 covers. And you've done it, man.
I have done it. So, and the other story is called The Star, which is a really interesting one about it's a comet that's coming through, and it's going to, it comes close enough that it affects, tidal, it affects a lot of things on Earth. And at the end of the story, it's like, all it says is that, if someone on Mars, and Mars does have, astrologers or whatever, if they were watching Earth, this is what they would see. So it kind of tells you that the Martians are watching us. And then in the Crystal Egg, there are these devices that we learn are planted around the Earth that they use to basically get a close-up look at who humans are, what they're doing. And then the third one is, the invasion. And I think it's a fascinating connection between the 3 of them, even though it wasn't intended to be a connection. None of them were really related to each other.
Yeah, at least not consciously. Yeah, but he had all these ideas going. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Martians come, and what gets them? COVID-19.
Exactly right. I mean, how could you plan the timing of this any better?
Yeah. Oh, man. That'll learn them.
Yeah. So I've also got my first children's picture book that's going to be coming out pretty soon. It's completely done. I'm working on the layout, and it'll be out very, very soon. And then a first novel by a debut author, a teen historical fiction novel that will be later this year.
Oh, how lovely.
Very lovely. Very awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you. And you can find out about it at Cosmic Press, which is KOZMIC press.com.
I'm glad you asked, because I would have hunted around for a long time without KOZ.
KOZ.
MIC.
Yep.
Press.
Not followed by KEY.
Right. It's hard to say MIC.
I know, exactly. Exactly.
Saying, you have to be at a certain age.
Maybe I should have done it MIK.
Yeah, Cosmic.
So I want to ask my 2 co-hosts real quick before we do a close. Are there any other questions that you guys had that we have not asked that you wanted to cover?
Well, if it's possible that we're going to get this out to people on Friday, then maybe this is the time to ask, what can people expect when they come to WHOLANTA on Facebook? I mean, how is that? That's going to be so different from the experience of walking through the doors at a convention otherwise. What's going to be happening? I mean, it's 6 hours, right?
No, actually, I think it's in the last day or so. Hasn't it grown time-wise?
Yes. It is Eastern time, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So now we're to 10 hours. Did I do the math right? And
good question.
So yeah, I mean, so in an on the ground convention, you'll be coming and going, and you'll go to other rooms, and you'll say, "Oh, damn it, this is at the same time as this other thing I want to see."
That's true.
So so this is going to be very different.
Well, yeah, it will be. We'll start it off with a panel, season 12 review, which is going to be just some of the WHOLANTA staff, and then from that point on, it's pretty much all guests. We'll have the Q&As in the evening. Colin Baker, Sophie Aldred, and Rachel Talalay, which I'm very excited about. Rachel was we were hoping to have last year at the convention, and she had ended up booking another convention the same week as ours. And so when I emailed her, she was like, "I just booked something else like 2 days ago." I'm like, "Oh no." Anyway, so I'm looking forward to those. And then we have a couple of concerts in the afternoon and in the evening. We have a panel called Doctor Who The Expanded Worlds, which has Jason Haig-Ellery from Big Finish, Chris Thompson from Eagle Moss, and Edward Russell, who was the franchise brand manager for 12 years, from 2006 to, he left a couple of years ago. The music of Doctor Who, which I mentioned earlier, it's going to be a full day. We're going to try and recreate the experience of going to the dealer's room or going to a masquerade by having separate posts. So, if you follow the dealer's room post, for example, different dealers can post links to their products, or their online store. And that way you can see who all is, representing there. And, I'm going to try to have some of them listed on our website as well, beforehand. And then cosplayers can, drop, if they're cosplaying the day of, send us some photos or send us some pictures of costumes that you've done in the past, So we're going to try and recreate as much as we can, through panels, Q&As, performances, and then these two, threads. So hopefully people will get the experience. Plus in the chat function, you can see who else is there, and you can, if you've got friends, you can, certainly comment with them. So hopefully it'll be like hanging out with you.
That's great, because the social aspect is one of the things I was wondering about. So that's going to be terrific.
Mm-hmm. So that is the hardest thing to recreate, of course, but hopefully people will feel like they're there,
So we can virtually hang out with Nicole Mazza.
Exactly. Exactly.
Cool.
All right. Well, gentlemen, Clarence, I know Lee had a question. Did we answer all your questions?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Alan, for being on. This was a lot of fun. And I want to say we are excited about WHOLANTA coming this Saturday. It's so excited. On Facebook, the links are, of course, in the show notes. So again, thank you. And to everyone listening, as always, we thank you for being with us. We're glad that you are here, and we will be back next time. You've been listening to the Discussing Network. Find out more at discussingnetwork.com.